Hello everyone, I'm Jack Fisher and welcome to my world. And when it comes to art, I admit that I am not the least bit qualified to judge, assess, or interpret it on a deeper level. I have no expertise on the subject, so whenever I talk about art, I do so in the broadest possible sense. Because to me, art boils down to simple aesthetics. If an image, sculpture, or some other display is appealing or beautiful, that's as far as it goes for a guy like me. I've been to museums. I've felt indifferent towards some works, and I've been genuinely moved by others. Being a lifelong fan of comic books and cartoons, I also don't deny that certain styles appeal to me more than most. But despite my limited expertise, I want to talk about AI art. Now, I understand that's a controversial subject for many reasons, and in previous videos, I've tried to offer a more balanced perspective. But at the same time, this technology is evolving rapidly. As a result, perspectives and attitudes are evolving with it. But when it comes to art, the impact of AI is anything but balanced. That became very clear in early 2025 with the whole Studio Ghibli controversy. For those who have already forgotten or just weren't aware, Studio Ghibli is a Japanese animation studio that makes anime with a very distinct style. You don't need to be too versed in the subcultures of Japanese anime to appreciate that style. Whenever you see a Ghibli-style animation of any kind, it really does stand out. For me personally, I think it's beautiful. It often carries this aura of vibrance, innocence, and youthful energy. Then, generative AI enters the picture. And for a time, it became a popular trend for people to use ChatGPT or other AI art generators to create Ghiblified versions of certain people, places, and situations. Some made Ghiblified versions of popular internet memes. Some made Ghiblified versions of family photos. Some even made Ghiblified versions of world leaders, historical moments, or movie scenes. However, this trend did trigger some anger and backlash from multiple angles. For Studio Ghibli itself, it was tantamount to stealing from them, because these AI systems can't just create Ghiblified art in a vacuum. In the most general, non-technical sense, AI learns to create these images by scraping the internet for large swaths of data. And that often involves utilizing copyrighted works. For an organization like Studio Ghibli, that's very concerning because their style is so unique. It is very much a part of the brand that they've built over the years. And AI did all of this without the consent of both the copyright holders and the artists. Now, that is a legitimate problem that predates the whole Ghiblification trend. But thus far, nobody has come up with a viable solution. Some companies like OpenAI have been repeatedly sued, and in many countries, copyright law does not apply to AI-generated work of any kind. But those issues have less to do with the art itself and more to do with the underlying premise of AI-generated images. Another sentiment these Ghiblified images revealed is the notion that AI art is soulless. Some go so far as to claim that it's not even art, because no human actually made it. No effort was put into crafting every intricate detail. A few have even gone so far to call it glorified Photoshop mixed with outright theft. While I can understand why many artists feel that way, especially those who work for companies like Studio Ghibli, I do think that criticism is flawed. It's like saying recordings of music don't count as real music. Now, it's certainly fair to say that AI art by its nature is derivative. It's akin to taking a completed work of art, putting some tracing paper on top of it, and tracing over every detail to craft an image that's almost identical. You could also call that plagiarism or art theft, but with AI, there are a lot more factors at work. Because AI can do much more than just copy an existing image or mimic a particular style. With enough hardware and data, it can effectively create countless images of near infinite variation. Not every variation will be appealing or true to form, and like plenty of work from real artists, plenty will look downright ugly. But within that vast volume of digital images, you're still likely to find some pieces that are genuinely stunning from a purely visual standpoint. Even if you hate AI in all its forms with a passion, the odds are good it'll eventually create something that appeals to you. And I think that's where some of the soulless criticisms come from. The idea that a computer can just spit out a bunch of pixels arranged in a certain way and we somehow think of it as art, that just doesn't sit well with a lot of people. From their perspective, art just isn't something a machine can ever make. Hell, it's not even something a machine should make. You wouldn't call a photograph art on the same level as a painted portrait. So by extension, you wouldn't call an image generated by AI real art. Except, that's still a very narrow view of art. It's also very subjective, which is an inescapable aspect of art itself. Because if you're going to call an AI image just a bunch of pixels derived from other pixels, then a painting is just a splatter of colorful chemicals on a canvas. It's overly reductive in that it purposefully ignores the forest from the trees. That doesn't make AI art any more or less legitimate. It just means that it's another form of art, one unlike anything we've had before. But there's another core element to AI art that fuels the soulless criticisms. And I think it's a much bigger factor for those protesting AI. And it comes back to the fact that creating AI images takes no real effort. Even if you're just tracing over a piece of artwork, that still takes effort. That even extends to people who make digital art without AI. Even if they're sitting at a desk, they still actually have to move the cursor on a screen to craft an image. But AI art, that technically doesn't require effort of any kind. Other than entering prompts on a screen, the AI does pretty much everything. It produces the image in whatever configuration best matches the prompt. Doesn't matter if it's way off or perfectly reflects what the user requested. There is still no real toil on the part of the AI. It's not a person. It's not sentient. It can never actually put something personal into an image, no more than a calculator can put effort into solving an equation. Even if you don't know or understand how AI works, just seeing it produce any number of images from a string of text feels like cheating. Instead of putting in the work to make a beautiful image, you just get a machine to do it. You care only about the result, not the process. You can call that soulless if you want, and that criticism may very well apply on some levels. But still, every one of those levels is entirely subjective. But with AI, this criticism has less to do with the art itself and more to do with the process. It's kind of like comparing a good meal made from scratch and a TV dinner you just put in the microwave. The vast disparity of effort means you're going to see the TV dinner differently. But it's still possible for a TV dinner to taste good. It may even taste better than meals from a 5-star restaurant, at least for some people. Subjectivity is what makes that distinction. AI is even more convenient in that regard, because it's gotten to a point where it can make colorful, complex, and visually stunning images in mere seconds. It can even generate innumerable variations from the same prompt, which denotes a level of creativity that we don't expect from a computer. And a lot of people just cannot accept that notion. That kind of creativity is one of those things that we see as intrinsically human. We strongly believe that only humans can be creative enough to make art. Humans are the ones with the minds, feelings, and souls, however you want to define that. And AI just has none of that, at least not yet. But even if it did, the perception of soullessness would probably persist. Because seeing an AI produce vast quantities of images doesn't feel like art. It just feels like a computer spitting out random images derived from actual art. Even if you think that's soulless, I would simply ask this. So long as the image is visually captivating and evokes the same feelings of wonder, does that truly matter? You may say it does. Others may say it doesn't. Nobody is right or wrong in this regard. But there's another element to AI art that is worth considering, which tends to get lost in those who criticize it. And it comes down to this. Not everyone has the time, energy, means, or talent to produce the art that they want. And not everyone has the opportunity to commission real art from a real artist. And that really matters for someone like me. because I cannot draw worth a damn. That is simply a talent that I've never had, and at this point in my life, I accept that I will never have it. But even as a kid, there were images and ideas in my mind that I wanted to make real. I tried to bring them to life. I've even commissioned some artwork from artists in the past. But it is costly, time-consuming, and even frustrating. A number of artists that I've worked with simply could not understand what I was looking for. But generative AI has given me a tool to make these images in my mind real. It may not be a perfect reflection of what I imagine, but it's way better than anything I could ever produce on my own. For me, that is genuinely fulfilling. I've actually gotten this unique feeling whenever I enter a series of prompts into an AI art generator, gradually refine what it produces, and ultimately arrive at what I feel is a great image. In an instant, this idea that once only existed in my head is right in front of me. And without AI art tools, I never would have been able to make it real. Sure, I would never claim to have created that image, but that doesn't make the image any less meaningful to me. So why would we deny that experience to others? Now, I've admitted before that I use AI art generators in some of my videos. And in that time, I've seen the quality of the images improve, and I expect that trend to continue. I also suspect that will only intensify the soulless criticisms. But I would make the case that AI art and human-made art can coexist. There will always be a place for images made by hand, just as there will always be a place for live music or meals cooked from scratch. One does not need to degrade the other. Yes, there are still serious issues surrounding AI art and generative AI as a whole. But calling AI art soulless doesn't help with those issues. And denigrating people who use AI art generators helps even less. That only feeds the perception that art is this elitist hobby reserved for a select few. But everyone, regardless of talent or means, deserves to experience art in its many forms. Whether the final product comes from AI or a human, I say that should not matter. Because if, in the end, it enriches our world and our very souls, then we should celebrate and cherish that experience. Thanks for watching, everyone. And thanks for joining me in my world. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, take care and stay safe.